Jane, we're ready.
You think I can see that far away?
Please stand if you're willing and able.
Thank you, Jean and Laura. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal, religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or, as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. We're glad to have you with us today. UUCS is a very welcoming congregation, and we appreciate your unique experiences, backgrounds, beliefs, and lifestyles. And if you're one of our long-term members or have been here a short time, or if you're joining us today for the very first time, we're glad you're with us. We're also appreciate those that are streaming with us today. Thank you for joining us as well. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest speaker this morning via Zoom. I will be introducing Stephen Polmar later on. He is a UUCS and an NAUA member, and I'll give him some more information about him as I introduce him prior to the sermon. A quick announcement. We are looking for individuals that would be interested in joining our worship team as worship leaders. This role is a key role within UUCS and one which allows you as an individual an opportunity to share your experiences and wisdom with our congregation. It's a voluntary role. Your commitment would be based on your availability, usually once every 1 to 2 months. There are resources readily available to support you in learning the role and developing your readings for a service. And I want to make sure that I take a moment to thank those who currently are participating as worship leaders: Lisa Conger, Barb Nelson, Richard and Karen Steele, Shane Gronholtz, Candace Schmidt, and Lynn Janesian. So thank you very much to them. So if you're interested in joining as a worship leader, please see me after the service or reach out to me via phone or email. My contact information is in the service directory, or the church directory. So now, why don't you go ahead, take a few moments to greet each other and say good morning. Hello to someone that you've met before or someone new. Thank you. We will have more time to greet one another and share stories and good conversation after the service during a coffee hour. So we now turn from our informal greeting of one another to formally begin our service by the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and inclusion, of our community and individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt where it has been found. So for my opening reflection this morning comes from Dean Koontz. All human lives are so profoundly and intricately entwined, those dead, those living, and those generations yet to come, that the fate of all is the fate of each, and the hope of humanity rests in every heart and in every pair of hands.
This last week we celebrated the summer solstice, so our banner has been changed from the spring banner to the summer one. I just want to remind you these banners that are changed every season were designed and created by Louise Cotis, and they were dedicated to the memory of Nancy Bauman. So now if you'll stand, we'll sing Chant for the Seasons, page 73.
Kindle our candles of care. Each time we gather as a congregation, there are always those who are with us in our minds and hearts, and who we want to wrap in our love and care. Let us share a moment in silence, embracing others who are here and here in our hearts and minds this morning. And you're welcome to say their names aloud as you're willing. Those named aloud, and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering elsewhere in our world at this hour, we hold in our community of compassion. We now gratefully give and receive this morning offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
love to invite any children who would like to come up for our Time for All Ages to come up right now. Hi, Theo. I think we've got some little animals joining us today. I see people crawling and panting like puppies. Wow, I brought my own special little animal friend for our Time for All Ages. Bun Bun is back. You do? Oh, that's exciting. Well, I've got one at church with me this morning, too. Well, it's great to see you, Bun Bun. I suppose you're all done with school now. And are you all done with school, too? Yes? You are all done? All done with kindergarten? What's next? College? First grade? Wow. First grade, second grade. I know we've got a fifth grader, a couple fifth graders. Very exciting. Well, I want to know, how does Bun Bun feel about being done with school? Bun Bun, you don't look happy. Would you like to tell me more? Oh, I know. He says he's going to miss all of his school friends and his teacher, but he's excited to play with his neighborhood friends at the park. Who exactly are your park friends, Bun Bun? Oh, you met them last summer at the park. And I'm remembering last summer you invented a game. It was like falafel or something. Oh, Farfaloofa. Do any of you remember that silly game he told us about? Farfaloofa. I'll jog your memories. If I remember right, you created the game rules all by yourself, and you wouldn't let the grown-ups tell you what to do. Is that right? Okay, that's right. That's a really fun way to play and learn. And do you plan to do that again? Oh, well, why not? You had so much fun doing it last summer. Oh, he says he feels like he's too old to play baby games. You sounded sad when you said that, Bun Bun. Does getting older make you feel sad? Oh, I get it. No matter what, each summer we are 1 year older than we were last summer. And that means that we might like different things. We have new skills and interests, maybe even some new friends. We definitely have new feelings. Sometimes growing up is a lot of fun. And sometimes it creates sad feelings or just confusion about what to do. I see two options, Bun Bun. Would you like to hear them? Okay. Number one, you could just change the rules of Farfaloofa to make them more challenging. Or number two, you could teach the other younger kids at the playground how to play it. I suspect that they look up to you and your bunny friends, and that they'd feel pretty special if you taught them how to play your game. I also suspect that you'd get some big bunny skills by being a leader for them. Does that sound good? What do you think? Should you try option 1 or 2? Yeah. No? Option 3? Do you have a third option? I love option 3. Well, Bun Bun, have so much fun. We're going to send these kids out to play on our own playground this afternoon, where maybe they'll invent a game like Farfaloofa, and we'll see you later this summer. All right. And now join me in singing our children out. They'll be going with Candace and Lynn to Play Club.
As we move into a time of meditation, find a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you wish. Take a deep breath in. Breathe out. Through it all, we attempt to bring balance to the present moment, understanding that in patience lies wisdom, knowing that what will come next will be determined in large measure by how we are now. This is helpful to keep in mind when we get impatient in our meditation, or when we get frustrated, impatient, and angry in our lives. Lao Tzu in the Tai Chi Ching asks this of us: do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? For our reading today, I'm sharing the words that Stephen Polmar had asked me to share with you. This is a reading from The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. It's from a sermon by Theodore Parker on May 19th, 1841. Such, then, is the transient and such the permanent in Christianity. What is of absolute value never changes. We may cling round it and grow to it forever. No one can say his notions shall stand, but we may say the truth shall never pass away. Yet there are always some even religious men who do not see the permanent element and so rely on the fleeting. And what is also an evil condemn others for not doing the same. Now, as always, there is a collision between these two elements. The question puts itself to each man. Will you cling to what is perishing or embrace what is eternal? The question each must answer for himself. Thank you, Maura. So it's my pleasure now to introduce, via Zoom, I hope, Stephen Polmar. Stephen is a UUCS member and a member of the North American Unitarian Association as well. He serves on the Provisional NAUA Board of Trustees as well as the Advisory Board of the NAUA Academy, and is one of the hosts of the UUCS Sunday Services Zoom group. He is also a volunteer coordinator for an interfaith group of 6 churches that provides housing for refugees in support of the Connecticut Institute of Refugees and Immigrants. Stephen received his undergraduate degree from Union College in Schenectady, New York, and a PhD and MD degrees from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. Retired now, he is an immunologist and a pediatrician, and held professorships at Case Western Reserve and Washington University in St. Louis. Following his career in academic medicine, he was a vice president in drug development at an international pharmaceutical firm, Boehringer Ingelheim. Stephen became a Unitarian at the age of 17, and while in college, he seriously considered a career in the ministry. However, his religion professor convinced him that he might be more suited to a career in the sciences and or medicine. Nonetheless, he has maintained a strong interest in religion, theology, and Unitarianism in particular, and this is his first sermon. He lives in Woodbridge, Connecticut, and Perugia, Italy, with his wife, Suzanne, and he will make his presentation via Zoom from Italy. Please welcome Stephen Polmar.
Thank you very much, Gordon. And I'm very happy to meet this group because I usually attend the services via Zoom at 9:15. I hope the sound is coming through okay. I would okay. Sorry if there are any technical difficulties. I would like to thank Reverend Egloff for inviting me to present a sermon from his pulpit. This is indeed a great honor. As Gordon mentioned, on May 19th, 1841, the Reverend Theodore Parker delivered the sermon for the ordination of Reverend Charles Shackford at the Hawes Place Church in Boston. The title of his sermon was The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity. During that period, in the mid-19th century, there was a great deal of controversy regarding a variety of theological issues, both within the new denomination of Unitarianism, as well as between other Christian denominations. These debates dealt with issues such as the origin and authority of the Bible, the nature and authority of Jesus, that the revelation of God's will through Jesus Christ was absolutely required for salvation of sinners, and so on. However, Parker sought to identify the core, the absolute bedrock of Christianity as a religion. That is what he termed the permanent, and to distinguish it from the theological noise of the time, that he termed the transient. He believed that the, quote, great truths of morality and religion, the depths of sentiment, of love to man and love to God, are perceived intuitively and by instinct. He opined that this religion existed in the facts of human nature and the idea of an infinite God. Moreover, he clearly stated that these truths of morality and religion, which for Christianity are based on the teachings of Jesus, did not, quote, rest for their support on the personal authority of their revealer, Jesus, any more than the truths of science on that of him who made them known first or most clearly, close quote. Parker goes on to say, quote, it is hard to see why the great truths of Christianity rest on the personal authority of Jesus more than the axioms of geometry rest on the personal authority of Euclid or Archimedes. So the question is Parker's concept of the transient and the permanent in a religion relevant to Unitarian Universalism almost 2 centuries later? The challenge that successive generations of Unitarians and subsequently Unitarian Universalists have faced during the 182 years of its existence has been to articulate the moral and religious truths of their religion in some concise way, a way that did not depend solely on a single body of religious literature, namely the Old Testament and New Testament, whose authenticity, accuracy, and credibility were clearly questionable, or upon the pronouncements of some central church hierarchical authority. Another challenge, perhaps unique to Unitarianism and Unitarian Universalism, is the evolutionary nature of the religion itself, namely the conviction that all moral and religious revelations have not occurred only in the distant past, but that additional insights have occurred since that time and are still occurring even up to the present day, and not from one source, but from multiple sources. In this regard, Unitarianism and Unitarian Universalism are more like a science than a religion. That is, we believe that we get closer to, quote, the truth by asking questions and by seeking answers from multiple sources, rather than being certain that we already know all that which is true and that no further inquiry is necessary. Unitarianism and subsequently Unitarian Universalism evolved during the last 198 years. Beginning in the mid-19th century, it began to cast a broad net in search of moral and religious truths. The first of these new sources were the ancient Hindu scriptures, the Puranas, the Vedas, the Gita, and the Upanishads, introduced to Unitarian theology by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Subsequently, the writings of other world religions were explored and are being explored. In the early 20th century, Unitarianism in particular was strongly influenced by humanistic thinking, with many of the signatories of the first Humanist Manifesto in 1933 being Unitarian ministers and Unitarian theologians. More recently, earth-based religion and specifically Native American influences have been incorporated. As Unitarianism and Universalism grew closer together during the first part of the 20th century, each denomination tried to articulate in a document of principles those moral and religious concepts that were fundamental to their faith. In the 1953 Universalist Declaration of Faith, the Universalists clearly expressed Universalism's Christian roots with statements concerning, quote, God as eternal and all-conquering love, and the leadership of Jesus, as well as statements affirming, quote, the power of men of goodwill and sacrificial spirit to overcome all evil and progressively establish the kingdom of God. In addition, the 1953 Universalist Declaration contained a statement specifically stating, quote, the supreme worth of every human personality, quote, close quote. While sounding humanistic, it was entirely consistent with long-standing Universalist theology and is reflected in the first principle of the current version of the 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism. The statement of purposes and objectives of the American Unitarian Association, revised in 1959, was more general than that of the Universalists. It mentioned the teachings of Jesus as love to God and love to man, as did Parker in 1841. However, other statements were less specific, appearing to be a compromise between traditional Christian influences and the strong emerging humanistic thinking within the denomination. After the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists in 1961, the new Unitarian Universalist Association attempted to summarize the central theological and governing concepts of the newly unified faith in a document of principles and purposes, which was subsequently revised and updated in 1985. Many of the concepts of earlier such attempts are reflected in the 7 principles of 1985, with reference to the origins of some of these ideas, now listed in a separate document, the 6 sources. All these efforts attempt to define the moral and religious core would have termed the permanent. Modifications that have been introduced over the years were made to clarify those core values, and in some cases to incorporate, quote, new revelations. For example, as reflected in the 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. While social justice has, since Parker's day, been a major emphasis of Unitarianism, Universalism, and Unitarian Universalism, Parker never considered these causes as part of the core of his religion. These were social and political issues to be dealt with and resolved. In essence, they were issues he would have considered transient. For Parker, it was the permanent in Christianity, the commitment of love to man and love to God, which enjoined one to act with, quote, humility, reverence, sobriety, gentleness, charity, forgiveness, fortitude, resignation, faith, and active love. This was the source of energy to address the social justice issues of his day, and in fact, to make them transient. If Parker had said instead that the core mission of Unitarianism was the abolition of slavery, at the conclusion of the Civil War, when the slaves were freed, the raison d'etre of Unitarianism would have no longer existed. Likewise, had a similar focus been placed on women's suffrage by a later generation of Unitarians, many of whom were leaders of the women's suffrage movement. When the 19th Amendment to the US Constitution became law in 1920, giving women the right to vote, Unitarianism would have found itself in an existential crisis. From time to time, I believe that it is appropriate to re-examine the basic tenets of a religion. This is certainly true for Unitarian Universalism, which believes that, quote, revelation is an ongoing process, and new information from the sciences and other sources should be considered as well. We are not bound by an ossified creed written in 325 AD. Indeed, such a re-examination is going on right now by the Article 2 Study Commission and at the UUA General Assembly. Article 2 of the bylaws of the UUA contains the clearest statements of the basic tenets of Unitarian Universalism as articulated in its principles and sources. Some have proposed to do away with the current principles and sources entirely. Indeed, the UUA General Assembly has just voted to do so. Others would like to have them summarized in one-word statements of values, while others would like to add statements of commitment to important current social justice issues with which our society is currently struggling, most notably that of racism. I believe that Theodore Parker was prescient in making the distinction between the transient and the permanent in religion, which, in my opinion, is relevant to the issues we face today. What are the core beliefs and values of contemporary Unitarian Universalism that will permit us to address the social justice challenges of today, while at the same time meeting the spiritual needs of our members? Can we express those concisely but unambiguously? The current worth and dignity of every person, justice and equity and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another and encouragement of spiritual growth in our congregations. These seem to call one to address the issues of racism, gender inequality, homelessness, and other contemporary social justice issues. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and the right of consciousness and the use of democratic processes within our congregations and in society at large. These highlight the way in which issues should be approached with rational thought and an open mind and resolved by democratic processes. While a valid argument could be made to reword or reorder some of the principles, being able somehow to encapsulate these ideas into a single word with unambiguous meaning would seem to be difficult, if not impossible. The current principles are trying to give voice to the permanent in Unitarian Universalism, even, as Parker would have said, quote, they do so imperfectly and miserably. Should the principles be discarded entirely, as some have proposed, because of the identity of the people who wrote them, their messengers? Parker would have argued that the truths that were permanent, the truths that were the permanent in Christianity, and the truths that we attempt to express as the permanent of Unitarian Universalism are intuitive and are not dependent on the authority or nature of their authors or their messengers. An attempt to bring greater clarity or accuracy to the principles, the permanent of Unitarian Universalism, may be a valid and worthwhile undertaking. Abandoning them entirely is not. Equally important is the need to recognize the transient, those ills currently in our society that need to be addressed, remediated, and if possible, eliminated, so that they are indeed only transient. These include, most prominently, racism, gender inequality, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, homelessness, income inequality and poverty, voter suppression, immigrant and refugee rights, gun violence, and the environment, to name just a few. As Unitarian Universalists, the energy and commitment to address and overcome current and future social justice challenges will be powered by the permanent in our faith, our principles. May it be so, and thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Our final hymn is page 40 in the gray hymnal, "The Morning Hangs a Signal." If you'd all like to stand.
In silent darkness
As we close today, I want to share these closing words from Reverend Steve Crump. That which is worthy of doing, create with your hands. That which is worthy of repeating, speak with a clear voice. That which is worthy of remembering, hold in your hearts. And that which is worthy of living, go and live it now. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum. Shalom.